Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Check, check. Test 1 2. Nope, it's going in. It's not working. Test 1 2. Check 1 2. Test, 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 test. Now it's working, but I don't know why it went out. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Check, check, check. This one's working. Test 1 2. But it's not very loud.
Test, test. Now they're working. Okay.
Test 1 2. I don't know why this one's not too loud, but
Alright.
check, 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 check. 1 2. Check. Test 1 2. There, it's getting a little bit better. Actually, no, it's too loud. Too loud. Less, less, less. Test. Check, 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 check. That should be about right. That should be pretty good. If it's too loud in the headset, let me know. Okay, so we're good there.
Yeah, you're in the green, so you're all good. This, so this one's still good.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Did it stop doing the sporadic sound?
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Like, it wasn't working right here. Like, is it supposed to be working right now?
Yeah, it's I have it stand by.
Test 1. Well, it's working. Yeah. We clipped a little bit. Test.
Okay.
Right, having people in responding on Zoom link.
Oh, I'm sure, given the weather.
Test.
My
1, 2,
breakfast.
test. Okay.
Yep, I can hear myself.
Okay. So let me give you this. Just if it's too loud, pull it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I cannot believe you guys are here. Thank you. That's really impressive with that snowstorm out there. So they're even shutting down maybe schools tomorrow. So you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming to yeah, don't go anywhere. Thanks for supporting us tonight. We are really excited. Darren has offered to do a series of classes for us, and we love having him. He's a wealth of knowledge, anything freeze dried. So, and we're also welcome Barbara, his wife. Thanks for coming and joining us. And I thought that your 16-year-old son Cannon was here earlier, so pretty fun to have the family. So thank you. Thank you all. Come on in. And so Darren has founded a company called Wasatch Freeze Dry, and he has some amazing things that he's doing. And tonight is Freeze Drying 101, and he'll share with you a little bit more on what that means. So thanks, Darren, for being here.
Okay, thank
All right.
you. So when I come in, everybody's supposed to give the big round of applause and entry. And maybe I watch too much TV. I don't know. Well, thank you. I got into freeze drying a couple years ago, and it's just been my addiction ever since. So I quit the corporate world and decided to build another company. So I started Wasatch Freeze Dry. Wasatch Freeze Dry, we do several things. We work closely with Harvest Right. So we provide all of the home service and repairs for Harvest Right. We're the only certified technicians outside of those folks down at the internal to Harvest Right. So if you ever need work done, give us a call. If you're under warranty still, give them a call, and maybe if need be, they will send us a ticket and we'll come visit you at your home. Also, Wasatch Freeze Dry. I'm in the process of making a book, so be leery of that. It's coming out this spring, but it's going to contain all those things that you really need to know. If you've watched other videos on YouTube, they're okay. I always say, well, take them with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of little things that you need to know that really make you successful. And so we're going to talk about some of those today. During my presentations, I like to talk about, and I bring up stories from things that I've seen all week. And I've visited quite a few folks repairing their machines, and when I ask them, now that you're ready to go, what are you going to do? And that's the big thing, right? Is I don't know. I didn't think about it. I just want to freeze dry. So we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to discuss freeze drying 101. How many of you have had your freeze dryers more than a couple months? Wow, more than a year? Okay. Um, Maybe you guys ought to be teaching the class. Well, we have some answers. And so thank you for coming. It's one thing I've noticed, even though I run a lot of machines and I do a lot of freeze drying, every day I discover something new because every day I do something different or there's a new factor involved. And that's probably what you're experiencing as well is you do a particular food and it's like, that didn't come out like that video or that didn't come out like I expected it to. So let's talk about that. I'm going to run through, you have um, your handouts, and I usually um, uh, when I work with companies, like, what's your company? Food Storage Depot, we offer a service of delivery. So if you don't have a machine, and I think everybody does here, but you at home watching, if you don't have a machine, you get it here. You can also um, purchase a home delivery. So what we do is we'll pick it up at Harvest Right, we'll bring it to your home, we'll set it up, we'll give you a mini class, we'll make sure that everything is running, and we'll talk through what you want to freeze dry and kind of get you set up for the thought process of freeze drying. Because there is a process, and it's something that I wish someone would have taught me, or at least was out there, because I did have a couple failures when I started. Anybody here not have failures when you freeze dry? Anybody have lots of failures? Well, I had a few. And so in thinking about it, I put together a process, and this is how I think. Hopefully you can relate to it. So let's just discuss this for a quick minute. So decide, prepare, freeze dry, and hydrate. So one thing that I did, and I told this story before, but I'm going to briefly tell you again, but one of my first batches was lasagna, because I love lasagna. It's like, man, we're going to put away a whole bunch of lasagna for storage, and if anything happens, I'm going to be eating like a king. So we made 2 9x13 pans, which is perfect for filling a medium. I took my pans and cut them in nice big squares and dished them up, put them on my trays, and I went to put them in the freezer, and I'm thinking, these are too tall. I don't think they're going to fit. So I just pushed them down, and they smashed out. And right at the top of the sides of the trays, pre-froze them, put them in the freeze dryer. 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours. Bing! It was done. I was so excited. Went and pulled it out, and I was kind of looking at it, and it's like, it's still saucy. I lifted up the top of the cheese, and it was like you could have just eaten it. And I'm going, 40 hours? What had happened is that melted cheese that was on my tray, when I pushed it down, created a blanket or umbrella, and it didn't allow that moisture to escape. So I've changed my thinking. So in thinking through that, if I would have decided, so I decided I wanted to do lasagna, but if I would have thought the process through, then I would have thought, okay, so I have a great big thick piece of dried lasagna. How am I going to rehydrate that? Right? I put it in a bag like this, put it in a bag. And I just use bags. Some people use cans and other things, but I just use bags. So I would have put water in it and stirred it up anyway. So I would have wrecked my beautiful square, right? So I didn't think it through. So I failed because I didn't quite go through the thought process. So, and this thought process doesn't have to be lengthy. It could be something that's really quick. I just want to, if I'm doing a casserole, okay, what is it intended for? Is it for outdoor sports? Am I going to put it in a bag? Is it going to be, do I want it portable? Am I going to put it in a bottle? Am I going to put it in a number 10 can? Is it a family meal? Just certain things, if you think that through, will solve a lot of problems. If you want something, let's say you're doing something for outdoor sports, for camping, and you want to have a single serving size that's about this big, about 4 ounces of dried food. When you're camping, you have limited resources. I mean, you could be running your fire or stove and things like that, but you want things quick. You're probably hungry and you're ready to eat. So if you have great big chunks, it's going to take a lot longer to rehydrate. So thinking about how you're going to use it is very important to ensure that you're not waiting for that to rehydrate and you eat it prematurely and it's crunchy and, right? So if it's something like Meats, are you, do you need to rehydrate it and put it right in the fridge overnight? So those are the type of things that you want to look at as you go through the thought process. For example, going back to the lasagna, the preparation, if I would have thought about it, I wouldn't have done it in a 9 by 13 pan. I would have put it in a crock pot, and that's what I do today. Is I crock pot it and then I scoop it out like uh, just like a casserole, and then I kind of spread it out. It opens it up so it can dry easily. The cheese is broken up, and it's very successful. So the preparation stage, check. The other one is freeze drying. So just as important as preparation, if you don't tray your food appropriately, you could have problems. I tell, so in some of my casserole classes, I'll say, like when you're doing um, mashed potatoes. Anybody done mashed potatoes before? So what I say is, don't take the tray and take your spatula and smooth that out just like concrete, right? It's not concrete. Because in doing so, what happens?
It doesn't turn out very
You seal the top of that, and it takes a lot longer, right? Versus if you set it on the tray and you just kind of push it down and separate it out with your spatula this way, and kind of and spread it out so that there's indentations in it, and it will freeze dry in half the time. So the preparation and how you put it on the tray is very important. Anybody have any tray issues or that anything they want to share on the tray? Anybody tray incorrectly before? Anyone? I have. Maybe. So a lady called me up and said, "Hey, I'm getting this vacuum air." And I said, "Vacuum air? We just fixed your machine. It should be fine." She goes, "No, no, it's taken 40 hours, and it's still not done. It's just apples." I said, "Well, send me a picture of the error on the screen, and also send me a picture through the glass." She sends me this picture of the glass. She had like 5 or 6 stacks of apples, all on top of each other. I mean, she had crammed those trays full. So preparation is important because, let me tell you why. If you think about a piece of food and it's under vacuum pressure, that machine is reaching clear down in to pull out those molecules of water. And the deeper it's in there, the harder it's going to be to get that molecule out. So the smaller your pieces and the more consistent they are, then you'll be successful. Make sense? Any questions? Yes. What do you mean the pad? The pillow?
I apologize. That probably should be for the people online.
Oh, gotcha.
I apologize for that.
So anyway,
Yeah.
hold it closer. We've run into that vacuum problem several times, but I've never been able to get it to work with a pillow in the door. And I don't know why, but then we've had other times when it wouldn't seal or hold vacuum, but I just had to wet a towel and wipe around that black seal, and then it would go ahead and seal up from there on and work.
Well, there's a reason why they don't send pillows out anymore. So if you buy a new one, you don't get a pillow. You have to go to mypillow.com for that, right? So yeah, you don't get the Harvest Right pillow anymore because you don't need it. I would imagine that it's inhibiting your door from closing all the way. Maybe something else that's binding in there, but you'll have to check that or give me a call. Yes.
We were having that problem, and I looked at it and I noticed that one of the things that hold the door up on top was loose.
So
Right
Up
up
in
there.
here?
Yeah, it was loose. And I tightened that, and then that did away with the problem. So, yeah.
So be careful with that because there's supposed to be a little flexibility in there. And when you shut it, it should close so that there's a pretty much a little teeny black ring around it. So if it's too tight, you're going to stress that acrylic right there and you may break your door. But if it's too loose, you won't get the vacuum seal that you need. So if there's just like a pillow, it might hold that out just enough where it won't.
Well, we were using a pillow along with that, and yet that door was so loose that it wouldn't tighten up.
Mhm. It probably needed a slight adjustment. Yep. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so let's go back to here. So, does this make sense to you? Decide what you're going to do. That will tell you how to prep and how to cut your food, and then that goes into, okay, how I'm going to put it on my tray so that I can be most successful. And we're going to talk some of those crazy foods that really are a little tricky. And then the hydration part, are you going to soak it? Are you going to put it in the refrigerator? Different foods take different types of hydration. And we can talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, so what I've done is I've worked with people every day on freeze drying. I thought, you know what, there's kind of these categories of food or categories of difficulty. It doesn't mean that category 1 is for beginners, category 2 is for intermediate, category 3 is for those difficult things or people that has done it for a long time, because I do every single one of these categories all the time. There's just when you get started, it's nice for someone to tell you certain things are harder than others. And so what I tell people is don't bite off the difficult ones first. Go out and let's talk about number 1 first. Category 1, I give a 1 leaf, okay, in difficulty. These are the things that once you get your machine, go out and do these first. Or pick out a few of these and get a little experience so that you get to know your machine and how long it takes and, undoing the pressure and what menus you need to do and things like that. In fact, some of them, you'll see Candy up here, right there. And that's one of the easiest ones you can do because you can get through the whole process in a couple hours. And so if you do a couple of those, you get familiar with the process and off and running. Then if you do things like, and most everything here is very little prep, if no prep. So you run to Costco, you grab a bag of cauliflower rice, comes in 4 bags, fills 4 trays if you have a medium, and you stick it in because it's already frozen and you're off and running. Easy peasy. And it's easy to put in your food storage. So, and have that ready. Anybody else? Now, this isn't a comprehensive list of everything out there, but it's a lot of the things that I like to use first off. Yes?
Eggs was the first thing that we did, and to me it was very easy to do, and I'd recommend it. And it was nice because afterwards, when eggs couldn't find them, we actually had eggs. So.
Yes, thank you. Now, there is a factor to this, and that is, depending on your level of experience and proficiency in the kitchen, right? Eggs are probably the one thing that gives the most people the most problems. Yes. And I'll tell you why. And I have that on my second category. And it's because if they don't whip them good enough, they make a mess. But as far as difficulty, they're not difficult at all. But if you don't whip those egg whites into the yolks and you put them on the tray, then you're going to get kind of that cotton candy all over your. It's never happened to me. I always use an emulsion blender. Some people use regular other blenders, but if you want to try it, use a fork, just whip it a few times and stick them in, see what happens. You'll see. What other comments? Anything else? The question was, what about meats with oils? Anything specific, more specific than that? Pork? Salmon?
Test 1, 2.
Oh, well, I'm done now.
Oh,
Yeah. So meats with oils. Now, I have different meats in different categories. So in this category, if you go buy, let's just say some chicken breasts, or now I caveat everything. I do not do raw anything but eggs. I know people that swear by it. They do raw shrimp, raw fish, raw steaks, things. That's great. You can freeze dry them, and they're good to go. You want to make sure that when you hydrate them, you treat them like they're raw. You hydrate them, you put them in water, put them right in the fridge, depending on what it is. But let's address pork, for example. If you get pork chops, which is really the best because they're really lean, trim off that outer layer and then sear your pork chops and cook them. I pre-cook them, and then, as I went through the thought process, I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with them? Well, if anybody had just steak without anything else on it, rehydrated steak or pork chops or anything, a little tough, a little tough. It's great protein. We need it. It's good to have in your food storage, but wouldn't it be great to have that as just a wonderful casserole dish? So what I do, and I did this in one of my other classes, is I brought in a crock pot full of pork chops. And the pork chops were probably half-inch thick. And I pre-cooked them, freeze-dried them, and then I rehydrated them in some brine, so like a salt solution. And then when they were mostly hydrated, I put them in gravy, which in a crock pot, and let them sit for a few hours, and you could not tell that they had been freeze-dried. That's what, for my purposes, I recommend, is if you're doing meats and steaks and even fish. Fish is a lot easier because it's not as dense, but rehydrate it in something and then put it in a final solution like a gravy or something like that. Fish you could put in maybe some lemon water, to give it a little extra flavor. But that really gives you a good food to eat versus I've just got to muddle through it because the times are tough outside, but I need my protein. We don't need to suffer, right? So yeah, good question. Any other comments on these?
with the raw stuff, I can imagine the bacteria is going to be there regardless, right? You're not going to get rid of the bacteria; it's just going to go dormant, right?
Absolutely, and it's like anything in freeze drying. There is what you put in it in the bag. If you cross contaminate while you're doing your prep, you will put that right in the bag, and it'll be ready for you in 30 years. So whether it's salmonella, E. coli, whatever it is, the freeze drying process will not kill it. Okay, and that's one reason why I cook all of mine because it lessens the chance of something in the bag. I prefer not to open my bags in 10 to 30 years and find mushrooms growing, right? Because I failed to do something and I put some contaminants in there. Okay, yes?
Yeah. Fancy one. So, can you talk about onions? We have not done onions before, but my sense is that it would really stink up the machine for a couple batches.
I've never had that happen.
No?
I've had
Okay.
people say that, and it's, oh yeah, I couldn't use my machine for weeks. And it's like, I see you shaking your head. No problem on onions?
6 or 7 batches, and I just cut up two batches today to put them in the freezer. But we've had no problems with it.
Anything
Yeah,
with-
slice them and dice them, or dice them, and it just they come and sometimes they take a little bit longer, but they come out and there's no smell.
Now, one thing I will tell you, kind of a trick, is pre-freeze anything with heavy aromas. Make sure it's frozen before you put it in. Otherwise, you will get those aroma. Now, aroma, if you look through a microscope, they're molecules. It's stuff. And we're going to talk about that in a minute on some of the pro tips I have. But if you can smell it, there's molecules out there that's going into your pump and into your oil, right? So don't let me forget, but I'm going to come back and address that. But yeah, anything with heavy aromas like that, pre-freeze it, and you will mitigate all of that. Okay? Anything else on category 1? Let's move on to category 2. So category 2, I consider more of just everyday things. We want to put away stuff that we eat every day as far as what we cook. And so anything in this category is something that requires preparation. For example, fresh vegetables, garden stuff. You usually have to blanch that, right? So some people don't do a lot of blanching, so I put it up here because you got to cut it and blanch it and make sure you don't overcook it if you want your optimum flavor and nutrition. And so that's effort. Other things are casseroles and things that you want to make, spaghetti. You can use a bottle of sauce or you can make your own sauce, but there's cooking and preparation involved. Does that make sense? Yes.
Okay, so one of the fails we had was
I love these. Go
it
ahead.
was really bad. It was broccoli, and I thought you could do it from frozen, and just put it on the trays, but it was
Without cooking, without blanching.
You can.
it
it's-
really scary.
If it's frozen, it's already been blanched.
Well, that's what we thought.
And if you're using the smaller rosettes, they work great.
And yet we opened a bag not so long after we did it, and it was black and nasty looking. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just how it looks, but we didn't bother tasting it.
We've done broccoli. I've done quite a bit of broccoli, and we get the large 3-pound rosettes from Costco. Maybe you got a bag that someone brought back, and they sealed the top with their sealer, and so I don't like broccoli. I don't know. I would try it again, but we've had great success with whether it's mixed vegetables. So anything that's been, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but it's worked great for us and so forth.
Frozen right on the trays.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, the mixed vegetables, I think we're both talking about. There's in Costco just next to them. They have the cauliflower and zucchini and so forth, and yeah, that works great too. Yes.
Maybe there was air left in the bag or the bottle that they were put in. Would that do that?
Yep.
We always,
And that's my wife, by the way, and I think she probably had a very good answer to that. And because it may have turned black because there was either air or it wasn't all the way dry and there was moisture in it. Broccoli is a little tricky because you have that denser stem, and then the rosettes are they could freeze dry in minutes, not minutes, but very quickly. But you got to be sure you allow for that bigger stem. I usually cut the big thick ones off a little bit so that they're not, some of them come with longer ones about like my thumb, so I try to cut those ends off. I leave the ends on the tray because they will freeze dry as a piece, but I try to cut them down a little bit. And if there's a great big floret, I will cut them in a little bit smaller pieces as well. Was there a question over here? Yes.
So ironically enough, we did the broccoli in the casserole, and it was fine. So we thought that was just kind of odd.
You put your black?
No. We did the frozen
You
broccoli
did.
in a chicken.
Stomachs of steel. That's just after my own heart. Okay.
So
All right. Yeah, you
did
scared
the
me there for a
broccoli
minute.
casserole, and the broccoli turned out fine that way. It was just when it was broccoli by itself, we said maybe it didn't didn't try enough. So
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you for solving that mystery.
Now, and when it comes to drying, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Some people will buy meters from Home Depot and use those. They're great for tubivores. Don't use them on your food. They're not sensitive enough. They can give you a little bit of indication of what they can, but you want something that's much more food grade. If you don't trust yourself to be able to determine, and I have, for example, so I have an apple, and I've got some treats for you when we're done. But if they don't go like this, they're not done. If they're now, there's some exceptions for you guys that have been doing it for a long time. There are exceptions to where things like maybe bananas that are really fibrous, pineapple, fresh pineapple. I mean, you won't get them to snap because of just how they're constructed on the cellular level, right? Yep. Everybody with me? Okay. Anything else on this list? Category 2. Okay, category 3. Category 3 is where I like to get into, and that's where my company is going, is really developing lines of food for people that have food allergies or that need special dietary needs. If you have food allergies, and I had one of my classes, I did a poll. I said, does anybody in your family have a food allergy, or you yourself? Over 50% of the class raised their hand. Can you see that? Do you know of somebody who has food allergies of some sort? So that's what we're developing at Wasatch Freeze Dry is food for food allergies, gluten-free, or because I have a couple daughter-in-laws that can't eat, that need gluten-free, so we use quinoa in replacement for rice and things like that they can't eat. So, but that's what this category is for. For people that really want to focus on every single aspect of nutrition or ingredients, and they want to control all that, right? They don't want a packaged lasagna from Costco. They want their own homemade noodles, or they want their own free-range beef, ground beef in that. Does that make sense? So it's not a difficulty level, but there is a lot more thought process in making sure that if you can't have soy, I got to make sure there's no soy or no nuts or no oils, particular oils, those types of things. So that's what this category addresses, and those that want to control 100% of their cooking and their freeze drying. And I tell you, that's probably one of the biggest benefits of owning a freeze dryer is being able to cook and store the foods you eat every day and control the ingredients that you prepare. Okay? Anything? All right. Now, category 4 is foods with attitude. And there's not a lot of them, and I call them attitude because I tell you, I don't do them. Or I do them very, very rarely, and that is blueberries. So I grabbed your blueberry jar back there, but these little guys, any fruit with a skin on it, grapes, cherry tomatoes, blueberries, cherries, are very difficult. And I say difficult because they take a long time if you don't prep them correctly. So grapes, for example, I've done grapes before, but I cut them all in half. And if you have the cut side face down, it's as if it wasn't cut. So you need to have them face up. So you're doing a lot of that. Now I also do, and one of my favorite snacks, did I bring it? I thought I brought it. I guess I missed it, but are cherry tomatoes. So we cut them in half. Oh, I was looking for red and I got orange. So these are cut in half, face up, and then we salt them with a jalapeno salt, and they're tasty. But again, cherry tomatoes. But if you want one afterwards, we'll have you try it. But they're very good. But they take a lot of manual labor. And so, prepping those. Other things are, did you have a comment?
Yeah, but I can
No,
wait.
go ahead.
Blackberries. We have never had any trouble with blueberries, but blackberries are the most finicky thing for us. Raspberries, though, on the other hand, work great. But I cannot get blackberries to freeze dry to save my life, even if we cut them in half.
Well,
So
it's
we just
because
don't.
you did you cut every
What's that?
little.
Canned blueberries. Oh, yeah. We can do blueberries without any trouble. So
So there's a difference between raspberries and blueberries. So that's probably a mistake that you've made. One is raspberries. If you take a look at it, they're hollow in the middle, right?
oh yeah, good point.
Blackberries are solid in the middle, and so that makes it even more difficult for them to reach in and grab those molecules. Also, every little nub on those berries is skin, and there's no way of popping. I mean, you can sit there watch TV and pop every single one with a pen. It'll work great, but you won't get, you won't get enough to save anybody, right? So that's why a lot of those fruits are in this category because they're just one day raspberries could do really well, the next day they didn't. And blackberries are just like I told you, they're tough. Pineapple, fresh pineapple, is really tough. I would say it's probably the hardest thing up here. If you slice it really thin, and then you improve your chances of being successful, but with the amount of sugar that's in fresh pineapple, it just makes it difficult. Anybody have an experience with fresh pineapple or something else? Yeah, pineapple is.
So pineapple, yes, have a pineapple core thing that has and then slices into the chunks. Works great.
Yeah, it works. It just takes a long time. Yeah.
Sorry. Canned pineapple works okay though because I think the pressure cooker from cooking it in the can's already broken down a lot of the fibers. So canned pineapple works great
Yeah,
with that.
absolutely. Now, you brought up a good point, and let me talk about that for a second because I brought a couple of samples here. For example, tools, and I'm not selling these; they're just some I grabbed, but using tools in your kitchen to prep goes back to the preparation thought process. Unless your knife skills are totally phenomenal, or you're just comfortable with having the freeze dryer go longer, having uniform size and consistency will help you be successful. So I use, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm doing small batches, I'll use something like a mandolin. If I'm doing like potato chips or something with potatoes or zucchini, big batches, then I'll use a food processor and just run it through and so it's quickly. But everything's uniform. And frankly, it works a lot better. For example, strawberries, I use an egg slicer. And just put them through an egg slicer, and they all look the same, and they look great. And anyway, what else? So ice cream. Who's done ice cream? What do you think?
Love it. Dust looked easy, but we did Fat Boys. We did Fat Boy ice cream, and it turned out great. It was easy to us to do. So. And
Okay,
Scoops.
that's
We
cheating.
did Baskin Robbins.
That's cheating. So this is what she's talking about. So she says she does Fat Boys, and they are actually quite easy because they're all uniform. You cut them up, you put them on the tray. You don't have to touch the ice cream because of the cookie. Have you ever done just ice cream?
We did it with the scoop.
Yeah, we did it with a little cookie dough scoop,
Uh-huh.
and we had to be fast, so we didn't have a runny mess on the tray before we could slip it into the freezer.
Yes. So I have I did the same thing. So I just brought these to show. So this is chocolate ice cream. But the reason why I put them on this is because and it depends on the brand too, and I don't know if you've seen this, but if you scoop it, put it on your tray, and you get a little bit of melted run, it bubbles.
Yes.
And so it doesn't look good, and I don't like the texture, but I like the pieces that didn't melt and then they got in the freezer. So it was very challenging to get all of that, get those in the freezer in time before I got the melt. And so that's the challenging part about ice cream, and I used a small scoop for that as well. But the way I fixed that is I put my tray in the freezer and froze it, and then I held the freezer open with my hand. I had the ice cream in this hand, my scoop, and I'm scooping as fast as I can in the freezer, right? And then when it started to melt beyond being able to scoop it, then I just put it all back in the freezer, give it about 30 minutes, and I'm back scooping as fast as I can to get all 4 trays done. So it is a little bit challenging, and it makes it so it made my category 4 list because ice cream is just a lot of work to get it to look and taste perfectly. Yes.
Anyone want to do that outside tonight would be a good idea.
We could do a tailgate with ice cream and we'd be just fine. What's that? Yep. Perfect. All right. Any other questions on category 4? Awesome. Yes.
Blueberries?
Blueberries.
Yeah, on the blueberries, they said you got it to work well. So how did yours work well?
Do you want to, did you guys do blueberries? How did you do them?
So we tried cutting them. I didn't really have patience to do an entire batch of cut blueberries, but in comparison with the whole berries that weren't cut, I guess we were just lucky.
Well, we had heard that Costco were already cut, if you want to say, or there was something different with the Costco. Yeah, so that if you got the frozen ones already, that they would work that way.
So let me give you a little hint on blueberries. Cutting them, yeah, arduous, right? It's like I don't know. You couldn't cut enough during a whole movie, unless it was Avatar, to really make a difference, right? So what you could do is you could get like 2 chopsticks, and it all depends on the size of your blueberries, and if they're uniform or not. But you could put them all on your counter, chopsticks on the side, and then use your roller and roll over them, bursting them open just a little bit. And again, if they're all, depending on where you buy them, you can buy them pretty much uniform, same size, and that works. And so you could just put a handful out, burst them a little bit, put them on your tray, and they still look like these. And these blueberries look awesome. They look like about 50 hours to me. but these look great. So whoever did those, kudos on the blueberries. Yes.
We just pricked them with a pin.
With a pin?
Toothpick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put them on the tray, and we just started going down the rolls.
You're patient.
Well, it actually went very fast. Yeah.
You can watch Shannon Green Gables and do that one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my eyesight's not good enough to just go through and
Mine was till Saturday.
until you got done with the blueberries, and then the squinting just took you down, right?
I have a grandbaby who loves blueberries, and I remember she came over kind of last minute, and we didn't have any. I'm like, wait a minute, we have freeze-dried blueberries, and it saved the day. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, blueberries are one of the most nutritious berries you could ever eat. So, but you got to work for them. Yes.
What about avocados? What category would that be in?
Avocado.
Oh, we just heard a big oh. A lot of keto guys here.
You've done avocados. What do you think?
They failed. They're spongy. Sorry. They were spongy.
Avocados are full of oil, but they
realize.
they take a long time. I've done avocados. They came out great. Did you slice them, dice them? How do you prep them?
Slice.
Slice.
It's like a game show.
And a winner. So try this. Try mashing them up into guacamole and then doing it. And that might help you out a little bit.
So here's a question. We were gonna order some olives from Germany, freeze dried olives, and I have no clue because of the oils how long those can last in a sealed environment without oxygen. Any clue on olives?
Why freeze dry them? They're so laden with oil, you could just put them in a Mylar bag that'll last almost forever.
But even the moisture, I'm sure the salt would preserve it, but the
Most of them have a decent amount. So you have to check your label. I don't know what, but most olives you can put them in a Mylar bag, seal them up, and they'll store for a long time. Not indefinitely.
yeah,
but
I'm thinking 20, 30 years.
that might be a little long.
That's what I was wondering about the oils, and I don't have an answer for it yet. So
Yeah. Yeah, if you read most books, because of their consistency and the fats in them,
yeah.
they will stay for quite a few years. So if you want to keep them for 30, you'll probably have to look at that a little bit more. But yeah, that's one of the foods that will stay quite a while.
Interesting. Wow.
Anything else? Okay, let's talk about a little bit. I wanted to go into hydration a little bit. Usually in the 101 classes or the beginning classes, it's like they're good with prepping, they get it on the tray, but they're not quite sure on the water and how to get it in. How do you guys do it?
Trial and error.
Trial and error? What's your trial?
I think we actually did pot roast from Golden Corral and got a big, huge thing of it. But rehydrating the potatoes kind of came out mealy. The carrots were fine and the meat was fine, but the potatoes had a really weird consistency. And I thought, well, what have I done wrong? And I still don't know.
So that was the error. What we typically do is we start with it's not a science for us, which is odd. It just isn't. But we'll try a little bit of water, and if it's still crunchy, then we add a little bit more water.
Okay.
That's our trial and error.
So one of the factors that you're not accounting for is you don't know what's in those potatoes. So you got them at a restaurant. Who knows what's in them, right? Could be a lot of butter, could be oil, could be cream cheese. Who knows, right? So you don't know those things, and that could affect partly on your rehydration. I've done mashed potatoes with butter and garlic, salt, and all the good stuff, just like I eat them, and they didn't come out as well. But when I did just boil the potatoes and then rice them, everybody know what a ricer is? And you rice them on your tray and then freeze dry those in just potato powder, they come out beautiful. So you add your water, whip them up, and then add butter and things to them, and they came out like you couldn't even tell. So try that. Yes. Ricing. So there's an attachment. Some handhelds have them. It's an attachment. It's about this big around. It has a lot of holes. It looks like a colander, and then it has a cutting knife in it. And so when you go down and you're mincing those potatoes, it comes up through the holes. Think of it as a big garlic press, and you're putting potatoes in it, and you're squishing them through, and they're extruding out the holes. So there's manual ways, but they're called ricers. Look them up. There's videos. But I rice my potatoes just on my trays. Makes them big. They sit up about this far, just enough to fit in, and they will freeze dry very quickly because there's a lot of air in it. So that's how I do it. Good question. Yes. Grab this mic real quick.
I took cubed hash browns that were frozen and put them in my freeze dryer and freeze dried them, and then I powdered them.
Mm-hmm.
And then just for experiment, I took the powder and started mixing it with hot water, and they made great mashed potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Just right from there.
Yeah, you don't have to rice them at all. The only difference is you may get a few lumps and bumps. It's just like if you do mashed potatoes with a blender, a hand mixer, you may encounter a couple lumps here because you didn't mix it well enough. But if you mix it too well, they're not that good, right? So yeah, there's a lot of different ways. But yeah, the concept is if you're doing it for potatoes, I would do just the potatoes, don't add anything, and then add when you rehydrate.
So my question is, we found it was very lacking in like how much water to rehydrate certain things from anywhere, from online, from Harvest Right. That was a bit tricky. So if you've got answers to that, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. Let me give you the. I'm going to take this. So medium tray, 4 cups, right? 4 cups is about what the maximum is of what you're going to put on this tray. Let's say we put 3 pounds of whatever on this tray. Freeze it. And this is what you'll see on most of the videos, right? You freeze it, you weigh it, and it says 3 pounds, right? You then put it in your freeze dryer, you pull it out, weigh it, it says 1 pound. How much water have you lost? 2 pounds of water. Okay. What if you're bagging this and you put it in 2 1/4 bags? How much water goes in each bag? Come on, you science majors. Do you want to get into it like that? I don't. And when I started freeze drying, it's like, I don't want to have to be calculating and so forth. So what I do is, and the caveat is, when I freeze dry, each batch is usually the same thing. I don't do bits and pieces, and it's all spaghetti or all lasagna or all vegetables or whatever. So that's the factor that I can control. Let's take spaghetti for example. I put spaghetti. I do 4 trays of spaghetti. I put it in a bowl when it's dry, and then I put it 4 ounces in every bag, 6x9 Mylar bag, which is about this size. 2 servings. I get 12 bags of 4 ounces each usually. I know how much water to put in each bag because when I defrost my machine, it goes into a bucket. And when that bucket's melted, or when all my ice melts, I just dump it in a Pyrex pitcher. And it says 12 cups. Number of bags divided by cups of water, 1 cup for every bag. Now, to me, that's easy. And I don't have to give it too much thought. Now, there may be some exceptions to that, in that I may want it maybe a little bit more moist, or maybe because of cooking or something, I just wanted to give it a little bit more, like soups. If you like thicker soup, put it in a cup. If you like it more like runny, put it in a cup and a half. So that's easy, right? But no one likes runny spaghetti. So you want to be pretty darn close. So that will get you really close. And what I've really found is I put a cup in it, like it says, but I'll end up putting a little bit more than that, just because I like it a little bit more moist. You can never get that molecule back where it goes 100%. So sometimes it just takes a little bit more, but that'll get you really close so you're not regretting your decision, and it's easy to track that way. Make sense? Anybody do it different? Anybody at home? Okay, what other questions? Yes.
So I've read online that some people have to rotate their trays and turn them around. Is that in order to get doneness evenly on them? Is that an issue that you've run into or not?
Only on people that, so on your paper, on the first page it says number 3. What does number 3 say? Number 3 says, let the machine do its job. It doesn't matter. I've talked to people that have said, oh, I've got to add 5 more hours, or I got to add 12 more hours because I want to be sure it's dry. If your machine isn't working properly, get your machine serviced. You should never have to overcompensate for the machine, especially with the newer ones. I run version 23, awesome. I've never ever had to add an additional time to make sure that my batches are done. So if you think you're having a problem or you have to compensate for what you think the machine should be doing, then we probably ought to look at doing a service on your machine. Okay? Yes.
What about altitude?
Altitude?
Yeah, does that make a difference?
If I have the machine up here or down on the bottom?
No, my son lives in Duchesne County, and he has two of them, and he always adds 2 extra hours because he feels like it's because he's higher up in the mountain.
I just did a machine up in next to Snow Basin, and they've never had a problem. They've been freeze drying for years and never had to do anything different. So I couldn't tell you that it's not a problem. I just never ever heard of it, and we're almost mile high here.
Yeah.
So
Okay, water. You get the water out of the product. Goes down the tube into the bucket. How can you be sure that you've got all the water out of your machine after you use it? Do you have to tip it?
your machine has a built-in graduated slant to the back. So when I defrost my machine, I do a couple things, and this kind of runs into another point I'm going to make in a minute. We talked about oil, right? And so when my machine's done and I've either used defrost, in other words, I turn my heating trays on because I want to expedite the defrost process, or I've left it overnight, either way, I can see if there's any water in it just by opening it up. But when I care for my machine after every batch, I pull this out like this. I keep a hand towel up here, and I can see if there's any water in it. There's going to be some moisture, sure. There's going to be a little puddle up here and so forth. But I always wipe my machine down every single time. And that's why you will get like I said before, sometimes I have to add a little bit more because you're wiping up a little bit. You could maybe wipe up an eighth of a cup or something. Who knows? Or water sticks to the sides of the bucket, type thing. There's going to be a little bit extra that you might need, but you're really close.
A lot of times after we let it dry, I can move that hose on the side and there's water that comes out of there. Not much, but a little bit.
Well, you need to be careful if they're designed to come from the bottom of the cylinder straight out. I've seen where some people, they come out and because they have a side on their cart that they're putting in, it goes up and over, so it puddles there. You're going to cause yourself problems if you don't have a straight shot out because these valves can rust over time. And I've seen that happen, and you'll get a micro leak where that ball valve is, and you'll have to replace it. You'll start getting vacuum airs about 3/4 of the way through a batch. So just be careful that is a drain and that it's not puddling in there. Over here?
So speaking of water, my concern is sometimes you put something in there that has a lot of water in to do your freeze drying cycles, and it freezes around on the outside. Sometimes there's more water than it can freeze without melting it again when you do the heating cycle. So you have to be a little bit aware of that too.
Like what?
Just having too much water in your food, at least on my machine. It freezes on the outside.
On the drum?
On the drum, but then the trays heat, and sometimes they melt some of that back into the system. So if you get too much water in there, you're going to have problems.
It shouldn't happen. What happens is, I mean, if you do like milk, which is a lot of water, you'll get about a half inch of ice forming around it. Let's say it finishes at 2 a.m. in the morning, then you have 2 hours of extra dry time that automatically kicks in, right? Right? Unless you've changed the settings to your machine, you get 2 hours of extra dry time. And during that time, it's saying, hey, come get me. I'm done, but I'm going to keep drawing if you don't come get me. Well, now it's 4 a.m. and it's going, okay, you didn't come get me. What happens then? The machine goes into a hard freeze mode. So it'll freeze everything solid, your food and everything, so it doesn't get moisture back in the food. If you're getting some moisture, then you may have a heating tray problem, or something in the sensors that are saying something that is not doing a hard freeze. Is everybody, if you don't, anybody had a different experience than that, where it doesn't freeze after you, and that happens to you guys, you get the hard freeze? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, keep an eye on that. If that happens, you might want to take a look. Perfect. Yes.
Online question. Breast milk. Somebody wants to know if you can freeze dry that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say.
Okay.
Yes. Over here.
So when you clean your machine, do you use anything, or do you just wipe it down? You don't use any cleaner of any kind, or soap and water or anything?
I use onions. Makes it smell great. No, like I said, when I clean it, I just pull the heating trays out, I wipe it down, and then I put them right back in. I'll also, I'll hold it like this, I'll wipe it down, and then I'll wipe my trays. I do that even though your machine looks clean. That aroma stuff that we talked about earlier today, they're molecules that are sitting out there on the edge of your machine that you can't see. All that stuff will eventually go through your pump. So I get upwards of 40 cycles through my Premier pumps. The manual says 20. I get a 40, and when I go to change my oil, it's clear. I could probably get more. But so I keep my machines very, very clean for that reason, because all that eventually is going to get in your oil and degrade your oil. Anybody else get a lot of cycles through your oil? Yeah. Go ahead and ask a question, and I'll repeat it. Here it comes.
Okay, what I was going to say. We get a residue occasionally on the inside of the cylinder. And of course, I do like you do. I wipe every single time. I clean the inside of the drum. And occasionally I'll have to use like she bought some kind of a sterilizer stuff that I'll wipe out the inside of the drum with. That's been my experience with that. And I had something else I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember it.
So I'm not sure what your sterilizer is. I'd be careful if it's a natural organic or something. Be careful if it's not harsh. So anything abrasive, I would not use. They will say, if you wanted to use Windex, for me, that's not an option. I've never had to use anything other than the moisture that's in my machine to clean it. And if you came and looked at my machines, they would look brand new. So unless you do something like this, and I went to a guy's house, he was having problems with his machine, it wasn't working well. And he goes, yeah, I'll be inside, just let me know when you're done. And I was out, I opened the door, had a pillow on it. Took out the pillow, set it aside. Oh, there's trays still in it. I pulled out the trays, and there was hamburger patties. And I'm looking at these trays, I'm going, they had to have been in there for weeks. And not only that, but he had cooked his hamburger patties on his freezer trays. And there were puddles of grease and all kinds of things. and the inside of his machines looks like your microwave. And I know what your microwave, maybe our microwave, right? But it was bad. And I'm thinking, I can't believe you're eating food out of this machine like this. But anyway, that goes to kind of the other.
Somebody online was asking about 70% alcohol cleaning, or do you use something else?
Alcohol?
70% alcohol for cleaning?
It's stainless steel, so you're not going to hurt it, but I guess you could use what you want as long as it's not abrasive, or I wouldn't use anything acidic, but that's me. Yeah, if I were to use something, I'd use vinegar and water.
I have 3 other questions online.
Okay.
If you have a minute.
Yep.
First one, sausage was on the easy list, but how do you get all the grease out? And will grease keep it from preserving for a long time?
Okay, and that's ground sausage. I didn't have enough room, so I should have qualified that. So ground sausage, it's all about breaking down the fats, and it's the same thing with steaks. They say, well, you can't do fats. Well, steak is marbled, has fat in it. So with sausage, you want to, like your ground hamburger, you want to cook it well, and then make sure you're draining all the fat off of it. Some people will even say rinse it in water. I don't rinse my hamburger. It's a method. If you want to rinse your hamburger to try to get as much grease out of it as possible, you can. But I use high quality, less fat as possible, usually 97% lean, so that there's not a lot of fat in it. When you cook meats, it breaks down a lot of that fat. So it's like you can't freeze dry bacon, but if you chop up bacon really fine, cook it, and then put it in a meal, it's going to work just really well. Now it goes back to how well did you cook out your bacon and how well did you render the fat. So those are things that are easy. However, if you don't do it correctly, you will limit the life in a bag or whatever's sealing it in. So I've done sausage patties just to try. They were probably about a year old. I opened them up and they were great. If I opened them up in 30 years, would they still be good? No one knows. Harvest Right's only been around for about 8. So anyway, so certain things you have to adjust for. Another question?
Another question. I get my oil contaminated from the food with every use. Any suggestions?
There's so many factors in that question because I don't know what pump you have. I don't know what food you're putting in it. I have seen people that if you don't pre-freeze your food and it gets a lot of more molecules get pulled into your oil because you're in that vacuum, there's more likely to get more molecules if you don't hard freeze. So just make sure they're frozen all the way. And, it may be your pump, and it may be the type of food. Maybe you're overloading your trays and food's getting, there's just too much for the machine to handle, so it's going through your oil. It's hard to say.
Okay, and the last one from online is how to hydrate. How do they really know how to hydrate the foods that they've taken or done?
I'm not sure I understand the question. How do you know how to hydrate your food?
Correct. So, like, I think I heard someone say that they would drain their water from the water goes through the pump out to the bucket. And then you
Okay.
could say how much water went out in the bucket, and then you measure that to your food, and so you know how much to put back into your
Okay.
food.
Now I understand the question. I was thinking, do you boil a teapot or okay? So how do you determine the amount of water to put back in your food? So the way I do it is I defrost my machine, and then I measure the water that comes out in my bucket, and I divide it by the number of bags that I get. But the only thing I have to do is measure the amount of food that I put in my bags. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else? All right, so a couple more tips and let's wrap up. I got some treats for you, and then if there's a few more questions afterwards, we can do that. I don't want to keep you too late. The snow looks like it's coming down pretty good, so we want to make sure we get everybody home and safely. So a couple things. Keep your machine clean. We talked about that. We talked about the tray usage, and I'm going down the 5 tips to start with. And I will post these out on my Facebook page for you that are watching from home. And then let the machine do its job. If your machine is not running like you expect it to, give me a call. And let's get it fixed, because you shouldn't have to really tamper with anything and change settings. And then consistency and size. Make sure that in your prep that it's consistent, and don't overfill your trays. You do those things and you'll be successful. So we have one more question.
On rehydrating, they're asking how to know if it should be immersed or add a bit slowly or cover with a moist rag to rehydrate. And is it best to use hot or warm water for some types when you're rehydrating?
Wow, that's a big question, because the different types of food that you have determines how you're going to rehydrate it. If it's meat and it's cooked, you're probably going to put it in some type of broth to start with. If it's not cooked, you're going to put it in cold water and stick it in your fridge. For example, if it's a steak or a pork chop, or if it's fish. If it's uncooked, cold water in the fridge. If it's cooked, you could do it in warmer water to open up that cell structure to get things in it. If it's cheese, you don't want to float your cheese, right? It doesn't even sound good. So take a moist towelette or a moist paper towel and just layer them and put them in your fridge overnight, and they'll be perfect. Same thing with grated cheese. Any other examples that you need to know about? Bread, same thing. If you take bread and put it in a moist towelette and just let it sit on the counter for a little bit, and it will rehydrate. And then if you make like French toast, you'll never know. If you use it as a sandwich, I did the other day, and I was going to give the bread to my son because he has a sandwich every time he comes home from school. I don't think he would have been able to tell. So, but you have to watch breads. Breads are very tricky because if you get too much water, it's going to break down, right? If you don't get enough, it's going to be a little bit hard inside. So just take a towel, a paper towel, squeeze it out, and then just put it in like a blanket and just let it sit. No. For myself,
Repeat the question.
oh, so the question was, do I do bread? I don't have the need to do bread because I store in my food storage lots of things to make bread. My flour, I got my freeze-dried eggs, I've got plenty of water, and I got some salt. And that's all I need for a lot of my pastas and breads and things. So, and yeast, all those things I do so I can make bread by hand versus, for me, it doesn't make sense to freeze dry a loaf of bread and then put it in a bag for later. I call it croutons. All right, anything else? I have some, Celeste, will you help me? This little, if you wouldn't mind passing the tray. So what I have for you today, just for, I wanted you to just take a test. So I have an apple. So these are gala apples. So give me some feedback if you like these. I've done potato chips. These potato chips are just potatoes and sea salt. No chemicals, no nothing like you read on the back of the Lay's potato chips. And then there's some Skittles in there. Everybody's probably had Skittles before, but What do you think of potato chips? So, what do you think of the apple? What's that? There's so many different ways to make healthy treats, right? I think these apples are better than candy, and the strawberries are just killer. So I prefer, and I sell a lot of candy in my business. I don't like the candy. It's just too much. But there's people that just love freeze-dried Skittles and all that stuff. So it's all preference. All right, I don't want to keep you any longer. Things are blazing outside, so have a safe trip home. If you have a question afterwards, I'd be happy to address it real quick. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We ought to give a round of applause too for the Food Storage Depot for hosting, and any needs that you have for water storage, because when you freeze dry, it all takes more water. So you need to compensate by storing more water, and these tanks would be awesome, right?
Yeah, they are awesome. You're right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, and we'll continue on and let you know when his next class is. So we do have a class here with our own Mitzi in 2 weeks. Just wanted to let you know a little bit more about it, what's coming up, and then when we schedule Darren as well.
Thanks, Sarah. So my name is Mitzi, and I used to be, I still am, a horticulturist. You never stop being what you were. Now I'm a food storage depot preparedness expert, which I was before also. Anyway, so in 2 weeks on the 7th, we're going to have a class here on vegetable gardening. And I'm going to help you figure out how to lay out your garden, north, south, east, west, what to put where, what to put next to what, how much to plant, when to plant it, all that, how to figure that out, and how to start your seeds. We're actually going to have a little maker space. You're going to go home with a little container with some garden seeds in it for you to sprout, getting all ready for spring. Yum. And we're going to also talk about which seeds you should start early and plant as transplants, and which seeds you should direct sow in your garden, and how deep and all that stuff. How to grow a garden as easily as possible, as maintenance free as possible, because we don't want you to have a garden of weeding. And we're also going to, so you'll be able to have, I'll give you a graph paper, so you'll be able to lay out your garden. You'll go home with your little seeds that are going to be starting and taking care of them. And we're going to also discuss how to harvest and how to save your seeds. And in our store right here, we have some wonderful 3 different options of heirloom seeds, which are kind of like purebreds. So you'll be able to save the seeds from the end of the season, and I'll help you figure out how to do that, and then replant them, and voila, the next season they will come back looking just like the parent plant. So we're going to go into all that. It'd be great, and you'll have delicious food to freeze dry or bottle or whatever you want to do with it. Eat it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Safe travels home. Thanks for coming out.
Test 1, 2. 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 Test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test, test.